Again, Tzn of the Dharma Characteristics School, in his 7-volume and 12-volume Forest of Meanings in the Garden of the Law, states that the one vehicle doctrine set forth in the Lotus Sutra is an expedient means, and that the three vehicle doctrine represent the truth. He also makes many similarly absurd pronouncements. But in the 4th volume of The Essential Meaning of Praising the Profundity of the Lotus Sutra, he is represented as saying that both doctrines are to be accepted, thus bringing flexible interpretation to the tenets of his own school. Although he said that both doctrines were acceptable, in his heart he supported the Tiantai teachings on the Lotus Sutra. Cheng Quan of the Flower Garland School wrote a commentary on the Flower Garland Sutra in which he compared the Flower Garland and Lotus Sutras and seems to have declared that the Lotus Sutra is an expedient means. But later he wrote, the Tiantai school defines this teaching of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life as the truth. The doctrines of my own school, on matters of principle, do not disagree in any way with those of the Tiantai school. From this it would appear, would it not, that he regretted and reversed his earlier pronouncement. Kobo is a similar example. If one has no mirror, one cannot see one's own face, and if one has no opponents, one cannot learn of one's own errors. The scholars of the True Word and the other various schools were unaware of their errors. But after they were fortunate enough to encounter the great teacher Dengyo, they became conscious of the mistakes of their own particular schools. The various Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and heavenly and human beings described in the sutras that preceded the lotus may seem to have gained enlightenment through the particular sutras in which they appear. But in fact, they attained enlightenment only through the Lotus Sutra. The general vow taken by Shakyamuni and the other Buddhas to save countless living beings finds fulfillment through the Lotus Sutra. That is the meaning of the passage of the sutra that states that the vow has now been fulfilled. In view of these facts, I believe that the devotees and followers of the Flower Garland, Meditation, Mahavaracana, and other sutras will undoubtedly be protected by the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and heavenly beings of the respective sutras that they uphold. But if the votaries of the Mahavaracana, Meditation, and other sutras should set themselves up as the enemies of the votary of the Lotus Sutra, then the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and heavenly beings will abandon them and will protect the votary of the Lotus Sutra. It is like the case of a filial son whose father opposes the ruler of the kingdom. The son will abandon his father and support the ruler, for to do so is the height of filial piety. The same thing applies to Buddhism. The Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the 10 demon daughters described in the Lotus Sutra will not fail to lend their protection to Nichiren. And in addition, the Buddhas of the 6 directions and the 25 Bodhisattvas of the Pure Land School, the 1200 honored ones of the True Word School, and the various honored ones and benevolent guardian deities of the 7 schools are also certain to protect Nichiren. It is like the case of the great teacher Dengyo, who was protected by the guardian deities of the 7 schools. I, Nichiren, think as follows. The gods of the sun and moon and the other deities were present in the 2 places and 3 assemblies when the Lotus Sutra was preached. If a votary of the Lotus Sutra should appear, then, like iron drawn to a magnet or the reflection of the moon appearing in the water, they will instantly come forth to take on his sufferings for him and thereby fulfill the vow that they made in the presence of the Buddha. But they have yet to come and inquire of my well-being. Does this mean that I am not a votary of the Lotus Sutra? If that is so, Then I must examine the text of the sutra once more in the light of my conduct and see where I am at fault. Question: what eye of wisdom allows you to perceive that the Nimbutsu, Zen, and other schools of our time are the enemies of the Lotus Sutra and evil companions who are ready to mislead all people? Answer: I do not state personal opinions, but merely hold up the mirror of the sutras and commentaries so that the slanderers of the law may see their ugly faces reflected there and perceive their errors. But if they are incurably blind, it is beyond my power. In the Treasure Tower chapter in the 4th volume of the Lotus Sutra we read, at that time many treasures Buddha offered half of his seat in the treasure tower to Shakyamuni Buddha. At that time, the members of the Great Assembly saw the two thus come one seated cross-legged on the lion's seat in the Tower of 7 Treasures. And in a loud voice he, Shakyamuni Buddha, addressed all the 4 kinds of believers, saying, "Who is capable of broadly preaching the Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law in this Sakha world? Now is the time to do so, for before long the thus come one will enter nirvana." The Buddha wishes to entrust this Lotus Sutra to someone so that it may be preserved. This is the first pronouncement of the Buddha. Again, the chapter reads, "At that time the world-honored one, wishing to state his meaning once more, spoke in verse form, saying, 'This holy Lord, this world-honored one, though he passed into extinction long ago, still seats himself in the treasure tower, coming here for the sake of the law. You people, why then do you not also strive for the sake of the law? In addition, these emanations of my body, Buddhas in immeasurable numbers like Ganges sands, have come, desiring to hear the law. Each has abandoned his wonderful land, as well as his host of disciples, the heavenly and human beings, dragons, and spirits, and all the offerings they give him, and has come to this place on purpose to make certain the law will long endure. As though a great wind were tossing the branches of small trees. Through this expedient means they make certain that the law will long endure. So, I say to the Great Assembly, after I have passed into extinction, who can guard and uphold, read and recite this sutra? Now in the presence of the Buddha let him come forward and speak his vow." This is the second proclamation of the Buddha. The passage continues, "The thus come on many treasures, I myself, and these emanation Buddhas who have gathered here, surely know this is our aim. All you good men, each of you must consider carefully. This is a difficult matter, it is proper you should make a great vow. The other sutras number as many as Ganges sands, but though you expound those sutras, that is not worth regarding as difficult. If you were to seize Mount Sumeru and fling it far off to the measureless Buddha lands, that too would not be difficult. But if after the Buddha has entered extinction, in the time of evil, you can preach this sutra, that will be difficult indeed. If, when the fires come at the end of the kalpa, one can load dry grass on his back and enter the fire without being burned, that would not be difficult. But after I have passed into extinction, if one can embrace this sutra and expound it to even one person, that will be difficult indeed. All you good men, after I have entered extinction, who can accept and uphold, read and recite this sutra? Now in the presence of the Buddha let him come forward and speak his vow." This is the third admonition from the Buddha. The fourth and fifth admonitions are found in the Devadatta chapter, and I will deal with them later. The meaning of these passages from the sutra is right before our eyes, obvious as the sun suspended in the blue sky or a mole on a white face. And yet the blind ones, those with perverse eyes, the one-eyed, those who believe no one but their own teachers, and those who cling to biased views cannot see it.